The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The crowds who were gathering to be baptized by John asked him, "What should we do?" In reply, John said to them, "Whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none, and whoever has food must do likewise." Even tax collectors came to be baptized, and they asked him, "Teacher, what should we do?" He said to them, "Collect no more than the amount prescribed for you." Soldiers also asked him, "And we, what should we do?" He said to them, "Do not extort money from anyone by threats or false accusation, and be satisfied with your wages." As the people were filled with expectation, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John whether he might be the Messiah, John answered all of them by saying, "I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I is coming. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand to clear his threshing floor, and to gather the wheat into his granary, but the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire." So, with many other exhortations, John proclaimed the good news to the people. This is the gospel of the Lord. So I'm going to invite Caitlyn to come forward and offer her amazing reflection on John the Baptist.
So I think when most of us think of John the Baptist, we might think something like Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway, like a long beard, matted hair, eating wild locusts and honey, and maybe talking to a volleyball or something. Haven't you guys seen a Castaway movie? Okay. And I think John seems a little bit too far removed from where we are in our day that we have a hard time relating to him. And yet, John the Baptist is exactly who we're called to be, to proclaim Jesus to the world, that the kingdom is coming. From the very beginning of his life, even from inside his mother's womb, John proclaimed that Jesus was the one that we had been waiting for. The time had finally come, and John was the final prophet in a long line of prophets to prepare the way of the Lord. How was John able to recognize the Lord? How was it that he leapt in his mother's womb when Elizabeth encountered Mary? The answer, I think, we find a little bit earlier in the gospel than we heard tonight, when it says that John was filled with the Holy Spirit even when he was in his mother's womb. And John also refers to the Holy Spirit when he says that the one who comes after him, that Jesus would baptize with the Holy Spirit and fire. So obviously the Holy Spirit is important here, but sometimes I feel like we look at the Holy Spirit the same way that we look at John the Baptist. A little bit wild, a little bit unfamiliar, a little outside of our comfort zone. We can understand the idea of God the Father as he was revealed in the Old Testament because we can understand fatherhood. And we might be able to understand and relate to Jesus as the historical figure, a man who walked on the earth as revealed in the Gospels. But it's harder for us to understand this idea of the Holy Spirit that was revealed after Jesus' resurrection and ascension into heaven. The Holy Spirit just seems a little bit abstract, I think. And yet, living in the age of the church, this time after Jesus' ascension, it's essential that we understand the Holy Spirit. He's the helper, the gift promised to us. Jesus even said, "It's good that I go away because something greater is coming for you, a gift for you that would be with the church as we journey." In our year of gift and call, we need to turn to the Holy Spirit because he is the one who gives us the gifts And he is the one that nudges us towards the calls that we have in our life. And I think we can look to John the Baptist, to his life, to learn more about the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit can do in our own lives. First, we see that the Holy Spirit is the one who disposes us to be open to God and to recognize God in our life. It was because John was filled with the Holy Spirit that he was able to recognize Jesus in Mary's womb. It was because of the Holy Spirit that he leapt in his mother's womb. It was also because of the Holy Spirit that he was sent out. And so we see in the beginning of his life that the Holy Spirit revealed to John that the person in Mary's womb was the Messiah. And the other thing that act shows, he leapt in his mother's womb. This image of a baby leaping definitely exudes joy. And joy, being one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit, is a way that we can see the Holy Spirit in action. So even though some of us might feel unfamiliar with the Holy Spirit, we can know he is present with us, first of all, because you're all here. It's the Holy Spirit that would have nudged you to come tonight. Perhaps this is just part of your habitual routine now, but it's the Holy Spirit that helped build that habit in your life. We can also see the Holy Spirit at work in our life and know that the Holy Spirit's at work in our life when we experience those fruits of the Holy Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, goodness. I only know these things because when I was little, I learned a song about it. I can sing it for you, but I won't. So we know that the Holy Spirit is present in our lives because God has been revealed to us. And so the Holy Spirit is the one who opened our eyes to God's presence in our life. And the Holy Spirit is the one who fills us with these fruit. And we can experience this joy of the fruits of the Holy Spirit in times of prayer, maybe in consolation or feelings that kind of come over us in times of prayer, but also in just our ordinary everyday life. The joy of a sunny spring day, finally, and the joy of, playing with your children or your grandchildren, the joy of just spending time with your spouse. The Holy Spirit is the one who fills us with that joy in order for us to recognize God's presence in our life. Where joy is present, we can know the Holy Spirit is present. And he is giving you this gift, this fruit, so that you can recognize God in your life. These fruits not only direct our own interior life or our ability to recognize God, but they also attract others to us. Joy and peace and goodness attract others. People see that and want to be a part of it. John must have been filled with these gifts or fruits of the Spirit, because I'm pretty certain that he didn't attract all of his followers by his appearance. I don't think, I would necessarily have been drawn to this man who came out of the wilderness proclaiming that the Messiah has come. The key for John, though, was that when others were attracted to him, he didn't hold that attention to himself. He directed it towards Jesus, who was coming after them. He told his followers that someone who is coming who is greater than he is. And when the Holy Spirit is working in our lives, people are attracted to what we have. They will want to know why we're joyful or peaceful or hopeful. And as St. Paul says, we have to be prepared to give an account of the hope that is within us. The Holy Spirit equips us to respond to that. When we are docile to the Holy Spirit, or when we are open to the Holy Spirit, we will have the gifts we need to share the gospel with others. We will also be able to recognize when we are called to share it, or when we are called to serve in a particular way. And just as when John the Baptist, just as with John the Baptist, people will listen when it's the Holy Spirit working with you. And we will be able to point them to Jesus, who is far greater than us. So sometimes the Holy Spirit seems pretty abstract, but I actually think he's the most practical person in the Trinity. The Catechism actually says that Christ pours the Spirit into us to organize us into our mutual functions. So the Holy Spirit's kind of like the greatest manager in history. He's organizing our gifts and our skills and our talents to serve the church and to serve the world. Throughout the history of the church, the Holy Spirit has provided certain people and certain gifts in particular times that they were needed. And he still does that today. He has given people in our specific church community specific gifts such as hospitality or administration or leadership or handiwork or music or a listening ear. And just as it is needed for our community, he has given us everything we need to build the kingdom in our midst. And we all receive the Holy Spirit through the gift of our baptism and confirmation. We have everything we need in us to live our calling as John the Baptist did, to proclaim Jesus to the world. But sometimes it doesn't really feel that way, does it? Sometimes I go home after a long day and I think, where's the kingdom? Like, where is this justice and peace and love that we talk about? Jesus said the kingdom is here. We need more people to embrace the spirit of their baptism, to say yes to the Holy Spirit who's already present in their lives, already present within them, and is ready to pour out his gifts even more within them. As John said, Jesus came to baptize with fire and the Holy Spirit. So when we were baptized in the Holy Spirit. It doesn't always feel like fire, though. But just because we experienced our baptism so long ago doesn't mean we cannot ask God to stir up that spirit within us again. Father Bob Bedard, who is the founder of the Companions of the Cross in Ottawa, he had a mantra throughout his whole ministry as he renewed churches and parishes in Ottawa. And he would always say, give God permission. Our God is a gentle God, and he is not going to burst in. He will wait for permission. You've already received the gift of the Holy Spirit, but maybe you need to say to God tonight, I give you permission. I give you permission to work in me in a new way, to discover gifts that I didn't know I had, to nudge me or perhaps forcefully push me to use those gifts in building up the kingdom. Every day we need to say to the Holy Spirit, I give you permission to work in my life. I ask you to stir up in me again and set my heart on fire for you and for the world. St. Augustine called the Holy Spirit the quiet guest of the soul. He's there and he is present in you. But sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that. Lately, I've tried to get in the habit of stopping every hour or so throughout my day and just saying, come, Holy Spirit. It's a reminder to me that it's the Holy Spirit working in me, not myself. Remember that John spent time in the desert, alone with the Lord before his mission to proclaim the coming of the Christ. We need to take time alone with the Lord, just like we're doing now, so that he can pour his love into us. That is how we are able to go out into the world. The love overflows from us that's been poured into us onto the people around us. Mother Teresa said to her sisters in a letter once, how can you go a single day without hearing Jesus say, I love you? It is the Holy Spirit who whispers that message to your soul, but we must be quiet long enough and be open and docile to him to hear it. As we continue to pray tonight, I just ask that we reflect on the life of John and how he leapt with joy in the presence of God, how he was filled with the Holy Spirit, how he proclaimed the coming of the Messiah, how he humbly and passionately pointed the way to the Lord. And we can ask the Holy Spirit to stir up in us once again so that we recognize God in our life and so that we will have the fruits of the Spirit that will attract others to us, and that we will recognize our own gifts, and that we will give God permission to use us. And like John's disciples in the gospel today, that we will say, what should we do?